Has the fear of doing something the right way, doing something perfectly, ever stopped you from doing it at all? Hi, this is Senorita from the bedroom floor, and we are exploring different themes of being in your 20s. And today we are talking about perfection. Let me start off with a small anecdote. When I was 15, I attended a music class. I had an amazing teacher, and I had the most fun learning how to play the guitar, how to read and write music theory, and it was great. One day, my music teacher met up with my mom to discuss my progress, and he gave pretty good feedback. But he also said this one thing that stuck with me, and I think about even today, is that he said that I am afraid of failure. And until and unless I am sure that whatever I'm doing is gonna end in success or is going to give me perfect results, I will not even try doing it. And as a 15-year-old, I didn't know that about myself, right? And I was very curious, where did my music teacher get this from? What actions of mine showed him that this is who I am and this is a personality trait. Um, and I don't know what made him realize that or what he saw that led him to understand that about me. And at that moment, I didn't even really give it that much thought or didn't even completely agree with it. Um, but those words of him or that observation kept repeating itself as I grew. And finally, a few years down the line, I realized that, yeah, well, I am someone who is afraid of failure. But even more than that, I am someone who will not even try things if I think it's not going to end up in success. And well, it took me some time to realize that's happening. And when I did realize, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because soon I realized that this characteristic of mine was stopping me from doing all these amazing things or just doing things for the sake of doing them. Everything had to be perfect, everything had to look great. And if something didn't end up perfect, or let's say I was drawing something and it didn't look the best, it was an immediate failure on my part. There was no place for mediocre stuff. I was always striving for perfection. And well, while it's not necessarily the worst thing, um letting the pressure and letting the fear of something or your work not being perfect and letting that fear paralyze you is actually pretty hampering to your own success or perfection, so to say. um so that then explains how I always wanted to create some form of content. I wanted to put my thoughts out there, put myself out there. And for the longest time, I just sat paralyzed in fear. I just sat there doing nothing and doing nothing but just thinking about how I want to do this thing, how I want to, how I want it to look, how I want the tone to be, how I want the optics to be, and everything. I thought about everything in detail without actually doing it. And I just sat there just paralyzed in this fear that, oh, I could do this, but oh, what if it's not perfect? And oh, what if no one really cares? And I somewhere forgot that the whole point of doing this was to do it for myself, to do it because it gives me joy and happiness, and not necessarily for it to be perfect and to be this really seamless thing, right? um and I feel after years and years of trying to overcome that thought process, I finally put myself out there in many ways, but also most importantly form of this in form of this space, where I share my thoughts and my opinions on things I like. So I did post my first ever um episode, and of course, I looked back at it and immediately I started pointing out things I could have done better, things I didn't like, the vibe I didn't like, and it didn't feel great. It didn't feel great that my product, something that I'd put out, wasn't absolute perfect. What I had forgotten is that it's not going to be perfect, first because it's my first ever time doing this. It's my first ever time editing videos, putting them out there, speaking my mind out on the internet. And it was never going to be perfect because I never had experience doing this. But I still held myself up to the standard of how it should be seamless and perfect, which was a little unfair to myself and a little unfair to my journey because the pressure was immense. So yes, I looked back on my first ever video and immediately started criticizing myself without giving some space for myself to understand that, hey, this is just your first video, be glad that you put it out there, and we'll do better the next time. Because I feel now I'm here doing my second video, I have a different aesthetic. I'm talking about not just a book but things that actually matter to me. And maybe 2 weeks from now, I'll hate this video as well. But maybe that is what perfection is, right? Perfection is doing a thing over and over again, and each time you get slightly better at it. Each time you go more and more closer to the idea of perfection for you. And maybe it's a good thing that we never truly attain perfection, because then you always keep improving. What comes after perfection? Isn't that the end? Don't you want to be always growing and always improving? So in a way it is great. In a way it's great that my first video was not really up to the mark, or something that I didn't like 100% love. Uh, but it only means that there's so much space for improvement. It only means that I can do so many things differently. I can change the lighting, I can add some plants, I can add some decor, and I can try again, most importantly. Um, and I think in a way it feels great. In a way it feels almost freeing to have that thought process. I did see this reel on online the other day, and it talked about how when you begin you're always going to be cringe, how it's always going to be cringe, and you need to learn to live with that. You need to learn to live with cringe. And well, if anything, this might just be that. This might just be me exposing myself to immense amount of cringe and then trying to grow immune, trying to just grow in general from it. Um, but yeah, I feel this just little experience, coming from just putting myself out there was great. It was really insightful, and it truly did take me back to those words of my music teacher, um, who, what now, almost 10 years ago, said this about myself, and I am still somewhat somewhere trying to cope up from it. But yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents on perfection. That's what I am thinking right now. And I feel while the pressure is immense and the fear is immense, I feel the regret of not doing the thing will always be greater than the regret of doing the thing badly. So I'm happy I'm here. here's a little section where I do talk about my favorites from the past 2 weeks. First off, we have a complete review of The Summer I Turned Pretty. Finally finished the book. Um, and I'll say that I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed because I expected more, only because I've already seen the series and I thought it would be super similar to the first season of the show. And if you're going in with that expectation, I feel you're bound to feel a little disappointed. I feel it was great. If you're someone who has already seen the TV series, I feel it's great to go back in the book. There's like all these tiny little things and details that happen in the book that are great to know. For instance, stuff like, spoiler alert, Laure and Adam dated before Laure gave away Adam to Susanna because she thought they both were perfect for each other. So you have tiny tidbits like that in the book, which, as a fan of the series, is really like shocking but also really fun to know about. um and I thoroughly enjoyed that part. um there's a lot more that happens in the book, obviously, than the TV series, and I don't really want to give it away. I do feel that there is something, even though you have watched the TV series, I feel there is still something in the books for you, some really good surprises for the fans of the TV show. And then after reading this, I really do feel disappointed because I expected more. But now I'm wondering, and now I want to know what the first time readers of the book thought, like people who first read the book and then watched the series. And I think maybe that experience would have been better because I feel this the season one of the show sort of serves you. It gives you everything. It gives you a lot much more than book one gives the readers. So I feel if you still haven't watched the TV series and are still intrigued about the book, maybe read the book first and then go watch the TV series. But I am intrigued. Really am curious about what sort of experience the readers had after watching the TV series. So that's about The Summer I Turned Pretty. And for now, I've taken a break from The Summer I Turned Pretty and moving on towards my next book, which has left me a little dumbfounded, has left me a little surprised. I am pulled in, I am hooked on, and I'm only expecting it to go upwards from here. This book is called How to Be Eaten. And no, it's not what you think it is about. How to Be Eaten is the story um, about this group of women who meet up in a basement in sort of a support group sort of structure, but not really a support group. But they come there in the basement to sort of share their stories. Each one has a unique story to share, each one has something significant to share. And on the back cover, it also says, daring, edgy, and wickedly funny. How to Be Eaten takes our coziest, most beloved childhood stories, exposes them as anti-feminist nightmares, and transforms them into new kind of myth for grown-up women. That was the first reason why I picked this book up. I love any kind of retelling of the traditional fairy tales. I love that. And even more than that, I love when the writers do it right. I know a few years ago I did read a book which was also a retelling of these fairy tales. I don't remember the name, but I'll say it wasn't the best one out there, and I was a little underwhelmed by it. But this book so far seems promising. So anything with a retelling of a traditional fairy tale, I'm in. So that was the number one reason why I picked this up. And then look at the cover. I love the cover. It is the wolf and there's the Little Red Riding Hood. Also because I am assuming there's a Little Red Riding Hood story retelling in the book. But I just love the cover. I love the whole traditional fairy tale angle, and I am very much excited. And I feel the third reason why I picked it up, because obviously it was a woman centric book, and I'm always drawn to those kind of books where women are just sharing out their stories. I have read the first two chapters of the book, and I'll say initially I did feel it was a little slow, only because I was just very impatient for the actual, like, sort of storytelling to begin. And when it did begin, oh my god, I have to say, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was gruesome in the most amazing way. It made me stop and think, and it made me not want to put the book down. So, two chapters in, loving it, and I'm really eager to figure out which woman's story in the book is corresponds to what fairy tale. That's really cool thing. Had a little bit of technical glitch, but yes, as I was saying, overall I'm super excited to see how it comes out, see and read about all the different fairy tales or the retelling of them, um, and what conclusions come out of it. Super excited, super curious about how it goes. So that's my first thing for this week. And a second little thing that I found out on the internet is a website actually, and it's pretty cool. It's very cozy, cottagecore sort of thing. Has no real objective, but it's pretty fun and pretty cool. It's called annasgarden.dev, and it's this website where there's a basically a garden, a patch of grass, and you can draw flowers and plant them in that garden. And this is basically accessible by all the people on the internet, so you can only see the variety of flowers that might be drawn. And yes, you can only draw flowers. Yes, internet can be a weird and funny place, but the developer of this website basically took all of that into account and made sure that you people can only draw flowers. So it's just a fun little thing. Go draw some flowers and see them being planted. I'll link the website down below, but I thought it was really cool. And yeah, I think that's it for this episode. And I'll say keep trying to attain perfection, but don't let the fear paralyze you from doing anything at all. Um, Read more books, go draw a flower, go plant it, and I'll see you next time from my bedroom floor.